Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Mel Gravely, Jennifer Kehrin, and Liz Picarazzi start out talking about the pain of being fired by a longtime client. It still stings, says Jennifer, who nonetheless surprised her team by writing a note of congratulations to the CEO of the company that took the business. The conversation moves on to the trade-off that comes with deciding between promoting managers from within or hiring them from outside the organization. What if your people aren't ready? What if the outsiders have more experience but aren't as good a fit? And that leads to a discussion of how to decide when to press on with a venture that's struggling and when to give up on it. Not surprisingly, all three owners have some experience in that area. Of course, they also have experience with deciding when to start a business, but they have very different attitudes about risk. While Mel says he's pretty much always ready to go, Jennifer tells us she's been noodling on an idea that she really wants to pursue for about 5 years. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. In fact, that's the whole idea behind the 21 Hats community, engaging with other owners to get the kinds of insights only another entrepreneur can offer. If you're interested in learning more, step one is to sign up for the Morning Report newsletter, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners so you don't have to go looking for it. Step two is to get on our Slack channel, where you can ask questions, get vendor recommendations, and tap the wisdom of a very impressive crowd. Just search for the 21 Hats Morning Report to sign up for a free trial. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Mel Gravely, chairman of Triversity Construction, a construction business based in Cincinnati; Jennifer Kehrin, CEO of SB Expos and Events, an events management business based near Baltimore; and Liz Picarazzi, CEO of City Bin, which makes trash enclosures and package bins and is based in Brooklyn, New York. The episode is titled, When to Pull the Plug, When to Pull the Trigger. Before we get started, just a quick reminder that time is running out if you want to sign up for the 21 Hats Marketing Workshop. We all know how frustrating it can be trying to get marketing right. It's complicated, it's expensive, what works for one business may not work for another, what works today may not work tomorrow, all of which is why Jackie Russo and I are offering something different. It's an unusual opportunity to participate in a collaborative workshop that will gather virtually 1 day a week for 5 weeks starting Friday, October 18th. You'll be led by Jackie, and you'll work with fellow business owners to create a real strategic plan tailored specifically to your own business. Each session lasts 2 hours and is followed by an optional 1 hour open discussion / office hour session. The total cost is $1,495 to get 10 plus hours of Jackie's expertise combined with the feedback and brainstorming of a 21 Hats focus group. To learn more, check your morning report or just shoot me an email at lauren@21hats.com. And now, on to the show. Welcome, Mel, Jennifer, Liz. Great to have you here. I want to start today with a topic that Jennifer suggested, which is what it feels like when a client fires you. Have you had that experience, Jennifer?
Yeah, it happened recently, and it was a long-term client, and it wasn't anything we did. It was our champion. We've had several champions over the course of many, many years, and the champion left, and the new person that we fell under had a group of people that she had worked with for years, like her own set of vendors, and she's really smart, very competent, and had formed a relationship over, 10 to 15 years with this other group, and so decided to go in a different way. It wasn't a matter of our work or our experience. It was just in what we do, relationships with vendors is so critical as a team. And that team culture, when you're doing it with vendors, is critical in any industry, but especially with ours because we have such tight deadlines. So she very politely, I wasn't saying it was fired for performance in that way, but politely said that, they were going in a new direction. They paid all of our cancellation clauses. And we left on good terms, but it still stings. It still hurts. And when we look back, if there's anything we could have done, I'm not sure there is, but it just goes to show you how much of the way you form a relationship with a client can be equally or sometimes more important than the actual performance of the work you do. So it's just a good reminder for us. Again, I'm not sure there's anything I could have done, but it stinks.
Did your champion go somewhere else where he or she might be able to hire you?
No, they got a promotion in their current organization.
Was this client sufficiently large that part of the issue here is the amount of business that they represented, the percentage of your total revenue, or is that not a factor in this?
No, that wasn't a big issue, as a matter of fact. Surprisingly, I think it was just the length of the contract. It was the contract that started the company. It was the founding client. And so because of that, I think there's emotional significance attached to that. It wasn't really the revenue. And again, it wasn't performance related, and they were wonderful about it. It was handled well. I think it's purely the emotional side of it. When you get attached to a long-term client, is how do you disengage from that moving forward?
Did you try to talk them out of it at all, or was it clear that this was a done decision when you found out about it?
Over the past year, when we realized who was going to be our main contact, we sensed about 15 months ago that this could be an issue, and we worked hard to try to build up the relationship. So we weren't completely surprised when it came down to it. We had come up with ideas and worked for the year to try to form that relationship. But again, I mean, I get it. When you form a relationship with a certain group, a team that's been really successful in the past, you want to bring that team together. It's like bringing the group back together. And I appreciate her perspective on it. It doesn't make it any less frustrating for us. We did our best, but I think it was a losing battle a while ago.
What was it like for your employees who worked most closely with them? Did they handle it well?
Yeah, they actually felt really bad for me. They were like, Jen, we're so sorry. What did we do? What did we do? And I was like, there's nothing you could have done. They felt really guilty. And I said, look, we all talked about this. We all talked about how this might be a possibility, how we can combat it. And let's dissect the issue, appreciate that we kind of saw it coming and things we tried, and let's move on and get other business. I don't want to dwell on it forever. We took a little bit of a moment of a little bit of a grieving session where they were very concerned about me, which was nice, but then let's move on.
You know, Jennifer, listening to you, like I get it. It's so easy for us to be, not easy. We get upset when this happens, but we celebrate when we do it to someone else, right? Because almost always when we win new business, someone had it before we got there. And for whatever reason, whether it's relationships or performance or a better value proposition, you know, I'm sure you've taken business from other folks too. And it just sounds like it was coming and you did you saw it coming. You tried to mitigate it. You couldn't. You did a postmortem on, you know, could we have done anything else? The answer is can't think of anything. And so, you know, as hard as it is, I think turning the page is probably all you get to do next.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. And that's a good perspective. I wrote to the company that got the book of business. I've known that person just at industry events. And so I wrote that CEO and just said, you know, congratulations. It's a great client. I wish you all the best. And my staff was sort of surprised that I would do that. And I thought, you know what? This industry is too small, but this world is too small. There was nothing that other company did. They didn't do dirty-handed tricks. They didn't, you know, badmouth me. They just won this business. And so I wanted to wish them well and wish the client well because it's never good to burn bridges. And I am shocked when I see people getting angry and burning bridges. You never know what happens in the future. So I tell them, look, if it never comes back, great, but you never know what could happen.
Never know. You know, the band played pretty well in the previous venue, but this is a different venue. And maybe that band coming back together maybe you really can't go home again. So you never know. This could come back. I never thought of, though, reaching out to the person coming in and wishing them well. That's a nice touch. That's even icing on the cake. So I'd say hats off to you.
Thank you.
Did they respond?
They did. That CEO wrote me back sort of surprised and said, thank you. And again, any industry can be too small as you start to get bigger. And I never want to be perceived as sour grapes or burning bridges. We played a fair game. We did our best, and we wish them the best.
Right. Well, and other partners that you worked with at that company, like if they go on to other jobs where they're in a decision-making role to hire you, they'll have had that experience to draw upon in considering you. When I worked in corporate, I saw that a lot, where maybe an agency would lose the business, but then it would kind of 10 years later, they bring in the agency back that they originally gave the business to. So, yeah, absolutely.
Liz, that's what I'm hoping for. Reputational, right? Is reputation of me as a CEO and of our company is that we do our best. We try to work with you long term. And if it's not a fit, then we want you to do the best you can for your meeting, for your convention, and who knows what will happen.
Mel or Liz, have you guys had that kind of experience?
Yep. So I would say my kind of response to this is definitely a lot different than Jennifer's. The one that's most vivid that came to me was when I had my handyman business, Checklist Home Services. And we really focused on, we had two products, the handyman for a half day and the handyman for a day. And so our clients would basically put together their list of all the sort of painting and caulking and IKEA assembly. We'd figure out which product worked for them in terms of time and staff, and that would be it. That model worked really well. But I sometimes went outside of that model, and on a couple of occasions, there were people that wanted more than the handyman for a day. They actually needed a full contractor. So they would try to stuff the work into, a regular handyman day. And so on a few, probably 3 or 4 occasions that happened. And, I think it was partially my fault, but I think you just got to watch out for people that are trying to stuff more work into like the service that you offer versus needing to kind of be a step up in terms of scope. So I remember it really hurt. And I remember feeling very righteous about, we're trying to help her out with all of these things. But seeing, let me stay in my lane. The way that I market my business, the way I hire my guys, it all lends itself to strictly a handyman business, not a GC. But it took being fired a few times for me to realize that boundary needed to be set.
How about you, Mel?
Yeah, of course. I don't know anyone that has long-term relationships with customers that hasn't had one decide to go another direction. I remember one that I would have to say was partially because they worried about our capacity to do all of the upcoming work that they had to do. So we hadn't failed to deliver on that capacity, but they worried that we might. And because of that, they didn't take all the business, but they took a portion of it. And it wasn't a small piece. It was like 40% gave it to someone else. And it didn't go well. Same as Jennifer, this is our founding customer, and they're very important. We gave a lot to them and invested a lot in that relationship. But we took the high road. I didn't write the other CEO's notes, though. I wish I'd have done that. That's a great one. But we just kept our heads down and we focused and we continued to execute. And it turned out to be a positive only because the customer had not had a chance to compare. And having others work with them that they didn't know showed them, it is better when we're doing it with Traversity. We thought it was just either more expensive or whatever they thought. It is actually different. And so in a weird kind of way, it turned out to be a positive. Those suppliers are no longer in this account. We now do all of the work again, but we had to work our way through. Yeah, it's probably 2.5 years of sharing the account. And, but I think it turned out to be a positive. So I say, just put your head down and keep doing the work, take the high road, and you never know.
Mel, that's my hope, is you just never know for the future, right?
Yeah.
Some people already reached out to us for some historical knowledge. And we said we don't have access to the technology to give them. We can give them old reports that we'd emailed them, but we're no longer in the account. We don't have access into the event technology to give them. And they were like, oh. And so I the same thing as you is, look, I'm taking the high road. I really wish you the best, but I'm really hoping to feel that maybe they do come back. It doesn't, if they do and don't, but I do hope that they see the comparison that they couldn't see before.
Yeah. The other thing is it frees up some of your capacity to maybe find something that's even better. Because I think sometimes, just like customers get kind of addicted to us, we get addicted to them, and a little perspective doesn't hurt them.
That is a very good point. And I think what Liz said too is that you get perspective on the scope of the work you want to do and what you don't want to do. And when you have a legacy client that for a long time, you just assume so much, extra work, I think, because it's built up slightly over the years. And this is a chance. It's kind of like when if you've ever painted a room and there's like 10 layers of paint and wallpaper or something, you start peeling back the layers and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Why are we doing this? We don't do this for other clients. So hopefully we'll see. But I feel good. I think by taking the high road, you can never feel bad about it. It stings, but it doesn't leave a lasting mark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And you think about it too, like, let's say that company has like 30, 40 people. If you're connected to those 30 people on LinkedIn, when they leave that job, you're already connected to them. I mean, I get LinkedIn sometimes is helpful, sometimes not, but I would totally connect with them there if you aren't already, because then a decade from now, they're still going to be connected to you.
Agreed.
Jennifer, are you doing anything differently than you normally do to try to replace that business?
Well, the whole year we've been putting a lot more emphasis on marketing that we've ever done. So I don't think specifically that losing that client, but this is the first year I've really leaned into more marketing. We've done a lot of trade shows. Imagine that, a trade show management company doing trade shows. And we hired our first business development part-time person dedicated. So not specifically because of that client, but overall knowing I needed to lean in.
And how is that going?
Slow. We have a long cycle. We have multi-year contracts. And so it's a long sales cycle for us. Getting a new business development person up to speed took a little bit. She's from the industry, so she's been fantastic. Just getting her to speed of us, the training. And then she has brought 2 clients and our life cycle from initial contact to when we got the signed contract was about 5 months. So it's a long life cycle anyway. 6 to 9 months is pretty typical. So continuing on to it, what I realized though is I'm going to need next year, I'm budgeting for a director of sales and marketing. I have 4 different people involved in this and there's too many pieces and not a leader. So I was trying out different things, a part-time hunter in the business development language, right? Going out to find new clients, someone that's doing account management internally to try to get current clients, get more business, a marketing agency, and then internal some marketing support. And I need to pull it all together next year. It doesn't matter that it's a lot of different vendors or different part-time employees. I just need one person to report to me because there's too many and I'm not, and then I have a project manager helping. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. I need one leader to talk to me and then to execute. I can do the vision and I can set the agenda and the messaging. I need someone to execute. I can't have these 4 people. It's too much.
That's something you've been focusing on of late as well, isn't it, Jennifer? Developing your managers and offloading some of what you've been handling yourself?
Yeah, that's our messaging for the entire year. Our mission for this year, let's say, my goal was management training is, as we've grown, I have tried to promote from within and give them resources. And I've invested heavily into them to be at a certain level, a director level. And what has come out is this is a longer process. We want to grow faster than it's going to take someone to do some of this. So last December, we brought in a director from outside the company, and her skill set was so fantastic and so strong in staff management. It made me rethink that it is not possible to get a really good worker to that staff management level fast, or some of them don't even want it. So I recently had a really strong, competent person who was leading a department. When the department was 2 people and her, she did fantastic. It's now 6. She asked to step down. She said it was too much. And I tell you, that was the best decision. I'm so proud of her for taking a step back so that she could move forward in her career, because it's going to be better for the company and better for her career to get someone in that actually has better experience. Because the managing of staff, that track of being a technical or subject matter expert is one thing, but the whole track of managing staff, I have learned so much about. It's a different skill set. You don't want to take your best expert and put them in staff management because sometimes they hate it. And then sometimes staff managers can manage 2 people, but you start to manage more and more. It takes a while. It's an entirely different skill set. So I've learned as a CEO what it takes to manage staff at that department level, what it's taking for them to do it. And I'm not sure I can always promote from within, just from a timing. Not that they'll never get there. They'll get there. It's just going to be a longer time period, and I need people immediately.
Mel, how have you come to think about that issue of whether you promote from within or hire somebody with more experience from outside?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Jennifer on that. It's a mix because we're the age of our company and our aspirations for the rate of growth, the individuals we bring in out of college, which is our highest retention, and promote up through, we're moving too fast for them. We're planning for their growth, we're planning for their future leadership, but it's 8, 10, 12 years out, and we've got to pace ourselves on that. So we're sprinkling in culturally aligned professionals from outside. I will say that it's harder to retain them. At least we're finding it harder to retain them. We're also finding it harder to make sure they're aligned culturally. But because we have such a deeply different culture here. So sometimes people say they get it until they get here and they say, oh, I didn't think you meant that. So that's a little bit more of a challenge, but it's worth it because we're sprinkling in these professionals, and when they work out, they help us grow. And when they don't, we help them find what they should be doing next.
What are you referring to about your culture, Mel? What's so deeply different?
Well, if you start with a purpose statement to model the diverse and inclusive world we want to live in, that's a strange purpose statement for a construction company. And I keep telling them, I mean, no one needs another construction company, but they need another model in the world. So the way we hire, the way we promote, the way we engage, the way we talk to one another, the expectations around empathy, the expectations around acceptance of others, we create these non-negotiables for our culture where I don't think a lot of companies find those things to be imperative. They find them to be important. Here, we just can't be who we are without them. So they're all bound up in everything, all the processes and procedures. And some people just don't like that.
Do you think you've lost good people as a result?
I would say we've lost people who should work someplace else. They weren't good for us. I can't think of a person that we lost that I thought, man, that's it. Darn it. Usually it's pretty obvious that they're not going to thrive here because of who we are. But if we aren't who we are, then we're really just a construction company. And I got to tell you, that would suck.
Jennifer, it sounds like you kind of won the lottery. You went outside maybe for the first time to hire an experienced manager, and you got exactly what you were hoping for. What did you do right?
It wasn't the first time. I think it was the second time. The first time didn't work out.
Okay.
And I will echo Mel's statement is everything he said is what I've seen on a smaller scale, but you just can't move fast enough sometimes for the internal people. You need to sprinkle in and then finding people that fit the culture. The first one that I brought in from the outside, the culture, actually it was 2 people. I'm sorry. One only lasted 8 days.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a really, really bad hiring decision on my part.
Yeah, but wait now. I'm going to let you off the hook. Who hasn't had one of those?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, that was a bad choice.
Did you end it or did they end it?
Oh, I ended it after it was at the 8-day mark, and she wasn't surprised at all when I called her. At all. I probably could have done it at the day 4 or 5, but I thought, oh, maybe this is just the first week. So this was actually the third person I brought from the outside. And what I have learned, and anyone who's been in recruitment or hiring who's good at it will probably be like, well, duh, Jen, of course, is really understanding not just the day-to-day culture, but the type of person that will succeed in your company and in this industry is really important. So for us, if you know trade shows, fantastic. But you have to also understand being what we call the third party, being we're in an agency environment with clients. If you have not been in that side and you've only worked on trade shows from internally, you don't understand the client management side of it. And I did not realize that until this person was hired. And I thought, oh, well, now on my interview checklist, I have to add in, okay, trade show experience is great. Cultural aspects of our company is great. But you have to understand what it's like to be on the agency side. I did not realize that before that person was hired. And it's changed my mindset of hiring quite a bit.
Can you explain what it is that they're missing if they haven't had that agency experience?
Two things. One is decision-making ability. You have some, but not unlimited decision-making ability when it's not your event. So you have to work autonomously, but understand when to ask for approval. People who work internally for a trade show make the decisions. So here you don't have final decision-making. And then second is switching between one client and another. One client's best practice may be different than another client's, and you can give them your best practices and the industry standards, but ultimately the nuances of client work is different. And so anybody who's worked in an agency, and there's a lot of similarities with marketing agencies, that creative type work can be nuances for clients. That's difficult sometimes for people to transfer over and understand that.
So I want to talk about another uplifting topic, which is how do you know it's time to pull the plug on something that's not working? Mel, I gather you've had some experience in this area. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this, Lauren, and I think that I've got a disproportionate amount of these examples because I try crazy things at times. Some might call them entrepreneurial, some might call them opportunistic, but I apparently have a low threshold for trying, right? And so you have these things that you go try and you realize that they don't always work out. So yes, I've had a number of, including a business that I think I've mentioned on this podcast before, that deserved to be gone. It had died long before we let it have its peace. And so now I'm just much more aware of the signs.
What have you learned? What are those signs?
Well, I promise you, I'm going to learn some new ones because I want to keep doing things that, are opportunistic and entrepreneurial, I'm guessing. But, let's just take a company that we were running and call it a C. We might gust up to B- performance levels. It was an engineering firm. We had great people. We just didn't have a very well-developed business plan or business model. We weren't clear about who we were. So we had kind of take what we could get kind of mentality. And it was just a very uninspiring business. And I learned a lot about what a business has to be from that experience. It was my first business that got to any scale. So I learned a lot about the people part of it and the positioning and the strategic planning and all that, none of which did we do very well. But it got to a point where we kept having to try different things to survive, different billing models, different pay terms, different even ways we pay our employees to stretch out cash flow. And when you start doing things like that to survive, it's a sign that something's wrong, right? And you at least should evaluate. And it probably, whatever you find a deep problem in your business, Mel's opinion, I'd say over 75% of the time, it is a business model flaw that it may be too late to fix. That there's something wrong with the value you're creating and the way you're getting paid for it, that it is probably too late to go back and fix. And so the only way out is out. And people don't like to do that. But before you cash in your 401k, before you borrow money from friends that you probably aren't going to be able to pay back and ruin long-term capabilities and opportunities, it is almost always better to cut your losses and move on. And I'll just say one last thing. I only learned one thing in business school, and that is the theory of sunk costs. And if people are making a decision to keep going because of everything they've already put into it, you will always make a bad decision. So you should only be calculating what are my opportunities in front of me because the other things are already in your past. And I did a whole bunch of that when we've been at it so long and we put so much into it. And of course, there's ego and all of that stuff in it. So, I've got project examples, business idea examples. It's been a fun ride.
Liz, I know you mentioned your handyman business, which you had before you started CityBin. In fact, CityBin grew out of it because your handymen were making trash enclosures, if I recall what you've told us previously correctly. I know you sold that business, but I'm curious. I'm not sure how well it did. Did you ever think about whether it was time to move on or pull the plug before you discovered the opportunity with CityBin?
Let me think. I would say I thought that I could do both. And after 2 years of really grinding myself with both, I realized I couldn't do both and I chose CityBin. So there was a couple of years where I was running both of them because I saw tremendous synergies between them. So we had, a shared bookkeeper, a shared workspace. We had a shared installers, shared vehicles. Like it all seemed to work together well, but one business was profitable, CityBin, and the other one was not. And so I had the opportunity to sell Checklist and I took it. And I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do that because quite frankly, if I had stayed in that handyman business any longer, I don't know what would have happened. I was really done with it by the end of it.
So looking back on that experience, is there a lesson you take from that? It sounds like you didn't go looking for the opportunity to sell it. Maybe that opportunity just...
It did. It was someone from EO, actually. So I'm part of EO and someone really loved the business, wanted to franchise it. I thought that would be a great idea too, if, he could have done it. And, it turned out not to be scalable. It turned out that without me doing the marketing and strategy and business development, all the stuff I did, that it was less valuable. And so, it died a couple of years after that, less than 2 years after I sold it. And, it does sound like a death. I grieved for quite a while, but I also really love what I'm doing now.
That's interesting. You had another business that was doing well and was profitable. Why were you grieving?
I really loved what the service was. I really loved the idea. I think there's a customer need there that is so obvious. Like someone should do that business. It's just not going to be me anymore. I think it's such a good, worthwhile service for someone to be able to take care of their honey-do list in a day. Like I'm a consumer of those services now too, and I really value it. It's so clear, but it's also hard to run profitably because if you want to have W-2, on the books employees, which I did, who were licensed and we had insurance, that costs a lot. So if people are accustomed to paying for a handyman that they found on Craigslist, my service is going to sound really astronomical. But I had to focus on that client that was important for them.
Sounds like maybe you should partner with somebody who has a construction business.
Oh my God, I'm going to stay on product for the rest of my life.
I was just thinking like that. It sounds like a great business. But when you try to scale something, the challenge is does the customer recognize the differentiation? And if they don't, then they won't pay for it, right?
Yep.
So if it is handyman services, they put that into a category. And if you're 35% over, I made that number up, they just, at scale, they won't pay for it. Of course, some people will because they'll get it. But that's what I mean by business model challenge. Like, sometimes you don't know until you're out in the market, whether it's a B2B business or B2C, whether the model really works. And if you don't check in on that business model early, you could do this for a few years and really get yourself screwed up before you figure it out.
Right. Or you can think that it's going to succeed based on your early results, which are probably largely due to it being small and you being highly involved.
Absolutely.
So you may not have the view at that point or the experience to know that it's not scalable due to all the reasons why businesses tend not to scale well. For me, the liability issue of realizing every time I send someone that I may have just hired a week before into someone's home, I'm at risk, both professionally and personally. That's not a risk that I'm willing to take without having good enough insurance to do that, which brings, the price on something like that. So it seemed great when it was small, but then hiring handyman was not very easy. I'll just put it that way.
I'm shocked. Never experienced that problem before.
Jennifer, you clearly have learned that there are times when you need to pull the plug on an employee quickly. Have you also had the experience on pulling the plug on some sort of venture or service that you've offered?
I don't say venture service. I think clients early on, I was really good. Some people were kind of shocked. I'd pull the plug on a client really quickly. I quickly learned in the first couple years that I wanted to be in a very, very niche industry and not to do extras. And I like pruned, if you think of like a wild apple tree or something, I was going crazy with pruning the first 3 or 4 years, which has been successful. I have learned, do not try to be everything to everyone. That's a way to death. The best way to start off as a small business is to do one thing really, really, really well in one client group. And then you can eventually expand. And a lot of people question me on this, that we are only right now doing convention and trade show management for associations. We get calls all the time from corporations, or we get ones where it's like a quasi-government one. We get it from foundations. I won't do it. And everybody's like, well, why? I'm like, nope. I only want to work because that is a marketing leverage, and that is what my staff understands. They understand the timelines. They understand the governance structure. They understand the budgets. And from a marketing perspective, that I know their language. There's a lot of other dumb mistakes I've made, not that one.
What's shocking to me is that when you try to tell people, they just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't do any government contracting, just as an example. And we are now one of the, top 10 in size construction companies in our region. And people are like, why wouldn't you go do this for the city or this for the county or that for the state? And one day that might change, but all of the things you said that your team understands, we understand none of that with the government. Mm-hmm. We don't know their motivations. We don't like their procurement process. We don't like all the paperwork on the front end. We don't understand how they do budgeting. I mean, we can do the construction. It's all the other stuff that's the problem for us. People just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of time could be spent looking at how things are done at every level. Now that we're doing more stuff in other states and nationally, the bureaucracy of it is sort of daunting. And there's not every company is going to want to spend time doing that. They're going to want to focus on the clients that don't have that red tape involved.
Right. Oh, and I'd actually say I'm more risk averse than Mel. I think I want some of Mel's entrepreneurialism or ambition, to be honest. I have a new idea that I'm not ready to talk about, but I have a new idea that's new in the fact that it's new for the past 5 years I've been talking about.
Maybe it's time to tell us about it, Jennifer.
Yes, now's the time.
It is going to be in my 2025 goal. It's a new service, and I am tired of talking about it and tired of not making the leap. So I have told myself I'm putting in the budget for next year, but Mel, I'm the exact opposite. I'm too risk averse to try this. And what's the worst that can happen? It fails, and I think I'll probably lose $50,000. I'm trying to figure out how much money I'd lose, which is significant, right? I'm not going to lose everything.
Right.
And I'm still, it's been 5 years. I'm still scared of it.
Yeah. Well, I get it, by the way. And the reason I think I am the way I am is I sometimes don't know any better. So keep in mind, I used to run a construction company, and I'm not a construction person. So these ideas made sense to me, and my team would freak out. And then I'd go do it anyway because I was CEO and I could. And then they'd have to rally to save me from myself later on. And we just talked about this last week, that the concern that I have and the board has now is there are no entrepreneurs left in our company. And so the fear is we're going to become a construction company. And if we are, we're going to have a real tough time competing. So they're working through that. here's what I would say. I think how much would you lose is a great question. There are two other questions I just invite you to ask, Jennifer. And one is, what is the true upside? And like, is this a sustainable business that drives an upside that you'll say, glad we did it if it wins? And the second part is, how distracted will it make you and your team? Because what I have found is, if it doesn't have a big enough upside and it distracts the team too much, then it probably wasn't worth it. If that makes any sense.
It totally does. I'm writing this down right now. And I'll tell you by the end of the year.
Yeah, you're going to do it with the existing team, probably. And so someone's going to be a bit distracted. And what's that going to look like? Because, I'm assuming people are busy in your organization like they are in all of our companies. But if you can work your way through that, then, man, I say go for it. And if it doesn't work, stop doing it and try something else.
I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Jennifer, just to confirm, it sounds like this is an idea that you would do within the structure of your existing business, not an entirely new business, correct?
It's a joint venture. It is in the same industry. It would be with my staff doing the work. And I have thought considerably, Mel, about my distraction level. That's one of the big reasons I didn't do it before, because we have been in rapid growth mode and I could not devote one more minute in my brain or my body to do something new. But I'm, as we've talked before, almost at the end of the valley of death. And so the new idea would be with my staff, but as a joint venture.
Intriguing.
I'll let you know.
I'm very intrigued. Yeah. By the end of the year, okay, I'm writing that down. End of the year, back with Joe.
Liz, I want to check in with you. The last few times you've been on here, we've talked about your issues with the China tariffs and your attempts to find another place to manufacture. Where do things stand?
So I'm actually in a very good place with it because it really was a lot of worry in the early part of the year with uncertainty starting in January when Trump said that the import would be 60%. My tariff would have been 60%. And then, sort of putting into motion where else could we produce? And then that led to Vietnam. So then in May, we went to Vietnam. We met with a couple of factories there. We then basically sort of put together a spreadsheet of all the numbers for the various options we had in China and Vietnam. And then I was like, I want to try the US or Canada. I'm going to just try one more time. It's been like 4 or 5 times over the years that I've tried to make that work. And I found what I think is a really good option in Canada. And we're going to be going to visit to meet the factory owner and to see the sample. It is about 25 to 30% more than what we would be paying in Asia. But there are some incredible supply chain efficiencies that are created. They would just be 9 hours, like a 9-hour truck ride to Brooklyn. And we might be able to even warehouse product up there, having sort of an inventory bank system whereby we can decrement from our own inventory instead of, down here, we pay for a warehouse in Brooklyn, which is very expensive. So you think about as we grow, something like a warehouse expense, you don't really think about a whole lot until you really see that number and you see, oh my God, my growth is causing me to have skyrocketing warehouse costs. But then a vendor comes along that can take that entire cost off of you. That's something that doesn't fit into an easy analysis, but is a huge factor in the way that I look at the costs. So there's sort of like the columns in our spreadsheet that are just numbers. And then there's a couple of columns that are about, I would say, if you want to call them the soft considerations, but something like the warehouse, the speed, as well as the terms of payment. So I really like the terms that I'm getting from the suppliers I chose. So there's still basically 3 options. There's with my current supplier that I work with in Shanghai, and then they've set me up in Vietnam. So that's my Asia option. I'm working with my current company, which I love. and they're doing both countries. We have production going on in both countries. Now, this Canada thing is what we're exploring next. So, I've got 3 really good options, and I feel ready for whatever happens. I have a plan in case Trump is elected. Vietnam is the plan. And if Kamala Harris is elected, I have 3 options, all of which I like.
I think you said you were going to give one more shot to checking out both Canada and the U.S. What happened with your efforts in the U.S.?
Lauren, I was afraid you'd ask that question. It didn't go anywhere. I talked to 3 or 4 factories. I had a really good meeting with one of them that I expected to get a quote from, and I never got it. And I'm tired of chasing. And, I went back to a couple of the places that I had bids from the last time I tried a few years ago, but the pricing was so much more that it would still cost a lot less to produce in China, even with like an increase in my tariff. So disappointing, but Canada is closer. And, if the state of New York or the country of the U.S. want to help me, a small manufacturer that wants to reshore my production to the U.S., I will take that assistance.
Have you thought about, if you do move more work to Canada, how you will divvy that up in terms of, will it be duplicating manufacturing that you do elsewhere, or a separate product, or what are you thinking?
That's something I'm kind of enjoying designing right now, because there are different types of clients that have different, like speed, for example. So if I have a city that really, really wants bins, but they need them in 6 to 8 weeks, China really isn't an option for me, nor is Vietnam. So stuff that's really fast, I would probably put up to Canada. Stuff that is very sort of high volume and replicable, like certain products that we have are higher volume, would probably go to Vietnam. And then anything that is really like we've really worked on the product together and developed together, and like, for instance, our bear resistant enclosures, I wouldn't put that into Vietnam or Canada, because I still view China as my partner in developing that product, and it's something that's really important. So I wouldn't move that.
Great options.
You've made the choice that Mel said he didn't want to make with his construction business in terms of dealing both with private and government clients. I'm just curious, since it came up in our previous conversation, how has that worked out for you? And would you encourage Mel to rethink that?
So I have 2 sort of paths to government client. One is like directly with a city, like I did in New York. But then the second one is with business improvement districts, which are like all over the country. In New York City, we have 76 of them. And those are all pseudo government entities, but they're much easier to work with. There's less red tape. And so that's sort of my way to get in. I didn't have to go through any huge RFP or any RFP process for that matter to get that work. So it's almost like government adjacent. If you have someone who can set up the stuff with, these government databases, if it drives you crazy, like it does me, I just have someone else do it. And I don't go anywhere near it, because that sort of work, it drives me nuts. I hate the red tape. So I guess what I'm saying is that I would only do more work with government if I continue to have the staff I have that has the patience to deal with it. And they do.
I totally agree. To me, it all comes down to, do you have people who can engage with their stuff? The good news about it is it's known and it's repeatable, but you've got to have a bit of an expertise in doing it. And Lauren, there's a little bit of a difference between a product and a service. We're delivering a service to them. And so there's these constant interactions over months and months of time that are all intertwined with their different procedures and practices than in my private work, where I think I'd sell product to the government. I don't sell products. So it just feels like it would be a little bit more transactional that way. Am I wrong?
I have a thought though, Mel, that, I've become more interested in government contracting from meeting other businesses that are doing it successfully. So if in your area, the sort of contracts that you might bid on, you look at what are those companies doing to be successful? Is this a space I want to be in? Someone might be able to tell you, like, this is a real grind, or this is totally worth it if you get XYZ correct. I wouldn't completely turn away from it yet, but maybe have coffee with a couple of people who can tell you what it's really like to be a government contractor, because you can learn from them.
Well, I think that's good advice. And yeah, and we've talked to some, we've even looked at a few projects with the University of Cincinnati, which is a state agency. And so it's good advice. We are opening an office next year in Columbus, Ohio, which is the state capital. And again, remember, I'm not the CEO anymore, so I don't make these decisions. I was thinking we should go to a different city next, but they didn't care what I thought. So that's cool. We're going to Columbus. It's a great growing market.
I bet they cared what you thought. You are the owner, right?
Yeah, I don't think they cared. They didn't act like they cared. How about that? Well, we're going to Columbus. So, Liz, this is our moment, because when you go to the state capital, I mean, if you're not going to do state government work,
yes,
you decided that half the economy you're just not going to pay attention to. Whereas government work in Cincinnati it's a good bit, but it's not nearly as large as Columbus. So I agree. I think we've got some learning to do, some benchmarking with some others to do to look into that. The good news is I don't have to actually lead the troops up that hill.
Liz, what's your goal when you go to Canada, and where in Canada is it? What do you need to find out?
So we're going to go and see the factory, meet the owners, see the sample. I'm sure kind of do a tour of the factory, and really kind of go over a potential plan. For me, this is, I like going to the factory to meet people because they're usually family-owned small businesses like mine. And I like to have that sort of connection. So I do think there's a part of it that is sort of, what would the experience of working with this person or this factory be like? And then, maybe discuss some specifics of terms. So like I said, something about like the warehouse, that's part of my negotiation, quite frankly. Like when I went on this whole journey, I never expected that at the end of it, I might be talking about how my warehousing costs could be reduced by working with a partner. But it took a while to get here. And now it's like we're fine tuning. So that's my goal. And I'm actually not going to share where in Canada it is.
Wow.
Because I don't want any competitors to figure that out.
Good for you.
I think you used the term soft cost to describe the warehousing cost. That seems like a bigger deal to me than that, like a crucial part of this. Am I wrong?
It is, but it's harder to quantify because I'm not taking the number directly from a quote. So when I'm writing out the hard costs, I'm looking at, what are my production costs? What are my tariffs? What is my container cost? Those are the three things. So that's the landed costs. But that doesn't include managing the supply chain. That's quite a lot of work, actually. And it doesn't include really stuff like looking at the warehouse cost in Brooklyn versus this place in Canada. So it's something that initially, when we laid out the analysis, we didn't really think to look at, but it does matter, and it could be an influencing factor in what we do. I know it will be, actually.
Wherever it is in Canada, I'm guessing the warehouse space is cheaper than it is in Brooklyn.
Yes. You know how many times I've talked about my warehouse on this podcast and in my 21 Hats columns. It's a weird thing that you have to deal with when you're an inventory business. It's part of the supply chain. And when I got my MBA, I actually got a C in operations, and I always stayed away from operations in all of my work. And now I'm not like Frank is really focused on it, but I like thinking about it conceptually, because this exercise was not about where do I get the cheapest bins. The exercise was where do I get bins that are reasonably cost effective and in a way that it simplifies my supply chain. So the simplification of my supply chain has some sort of a dollar amount. And I guess what I'm saying is that's sort of the soft cost that I have a hunch about what that is, but I haven't actually put in like a multiple. Like there's a 30% cost to us because of the hassle of working with China. Like when you really boil it down, that's what that number is how much is that number? And we're going to have conversations to figure out what that is.
Well, we will be eager to hear more, but we're out of time now. My thanks to Mel Gravely, Jennifer Kehrin, and Liz Picarazzi. Thanks for sharing, guys. One thing before you go. Everything we do at 21 Hats is created by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs to help us all learn together. If you get something out of listening to these podcast episodes, consider joining the conversation. You can do so by joining the 21 Hats Sounding Board, a Slack channel where you can tap the wisdom of a very smart crowd, or by becoming a founding member and joining our monthly Zoom forum, where you can be part of conversations much like the ones we have on the podcast. You can sign up for both by subscribing to the Morning Report. If you have any questions, you can email me at Loren, Loren, at 21hats.com. And if you get something out of this podcast or out of the Morning Report, please tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell every business owner you know. Your word of mouth, owner to owner, will always be the most effective way to build this community for all of us. Thank you. It means a lot. This episode was produced by another entrepreneur, Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Thanks for listening, everyone.